The conference hall on Station Meridian 7 hummed with the kind of tension that made my secondary breathing tubes itch. I adjusted my ceremonial sash, the one that marked me as lead xenobiologist of the Galactic Council, and tried not to think about how much I regretted accepting this assignment. "They are very proud of this one," whispered Krell beside me, his 4 eyes blinking in that nervous pattern that meant he would rather be anywhere else. Krell was my assistant, a Vortian with decent research skills but absolutely zero sense of self-preservation. "They are always proud," I muttered back, watching as the Threxian delegation prepared their presentation. The Threxians were newcomers to the council, barely 3 cycles into their membership, and they had that eager, almost desperate need to prove themselves. It would have been endearing if it were not so exhausting. The lights dimmed. "Here we go." Ambassador Vex 9, the Threxian representative, stepped onto the platform with all 6 of his legs moving in perfect synchronization. "Show off." His scales gleamed under the spotlights, purple and gold, probably polished for hours before this event. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Vex 9 began, his voice booming through the translation matrix. "Today, we present to you our greatest achievement, the apex predator of our world, the ultimate hunter, the creature that has dominated our planet for 10 million cycles." Oh, wonderful. Another apex predator presentation. Because we had not seen 50 of those this season alone, the containment field shimmered into existence at the center of the hall. Inside it, something moved. Something big. The creature that materialized was impressive, I had to admit. It stood on 4 powerful legs, each ending in claws that could probably tear through standard hull plating. Its hide was covered in armored plates that shifted colors, some kind of adaptive camouflage system. 2 rows of razor-sharp teeth lined its massive jaws. "Behold," Vex 9 announced with the kind of dramatic flair that made me want to file an early retirement request. "The Creax, apex predator. Undefeated. Unstoppable." Polite applause rippled through the audience. The creature roared, and yes, it was impressive. The sound resonated in my chest cavity. Several delegates from prey species worlds shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then I heard it. A sound that should not have been possible in this moment of carefully orchestrated grandeur. Laughter. Not just any laughter. The kind of laugh that someone makes when they are trying very hard not to laugh, but failing completely. The kind that turns into a snort. Every head in the conference hall turned toward the humans section. Of course, it was the humans. Why would it be anyone else? The human delegation sat in the back corner, as they usually did. They were still new to the council, barely 2 cycles in, and they seemed to find everything either fascinating or hilarious. Frequently both. The laugh had come from one of them, a young one, wearing the gray uniform that marked her as a cadet. She had her hand clamped over her mouth, her face turning an alarming shade of red that I had learned meant humans were either embarrassed, angry, or about to explode. Sometimes all 3. Ambassador Vex 9's scales rippled with irritation. "Is something amusing?" The human cadet stood up. Oh no, this was going to be bad. I could feel it in my primary liver. "I am so sorry," she said, and she actually did sound sorry, which somehow made it worse. "I did not mean to laugh. It is just, well what?" Vex 9's voice had gone very quiet. That was never a good sign. The human cadet looked at her companions, then back at the Creax in the containment field. The creature was still roaring, still displaying its impressive teeth and claws, still being the ultimate apex predator of Threxian Prime. "Is it house-trained?" she asked. The silence that followed was the kind that civilizations are built on, the kind that historians write about, the kind that makes you question every life choice that led you to this exact moment. "I beg your pardon," Vex 9 finally managed. "House-trained," the human repeated, gesturing at the Creax. "You know, does it know not to? Make messes indoors? Because it looks exactly like my neighbor's dog back home, just bigger and with more teeth. And honestly, Steve's dog is not house-trained at all. It is a whole situation." Krell made a choking sound beside me. The human cadet continued, apparently unaware that she had just committed what might be considered a diplomatic incident. "I mean, it is impressive and all. Very scary. Good teeth. But if we are talking apex predators, I feel like there might be some context missing here. Like, what else lives on your planet? Because if this is the scariest thing you have got, I am just saying, you should probably not visit Earth." We have got things that would give your apex predator nightmares. Ambassador Vex9 scales had gone completely flat against his body. Are you suggesting that your world has more dangerous creatures than the Creax? The human cadet tilted her head, considering. I mean, yeah, definitely. We have got polar bears, saltwater crocodiles, hippos, box jellyfish, mosquitoes, Vex9 repeated, his voice strangled. They kill like 700,000 people a year, the human said cheerfully. Tiny little things. Barely visible. Way scarier than Fluffy here. Fluffy, that is what I am calling your apex predator. It needs a name. I pressed my face into my hands, all three of them. This was going to be a very long day. The conference hall had descended into chaos, and I was seriously considering whether faking a medical emergency would be considered cowardly or just sensible career management. Ambassador Vex9 scales were now cycling through colors I had never seen before, which probably meant he was experiencing emotions that did not have names in most languages. The Creax, still in its containment field, had stopped roaring and was now staring at the human cadet with what I could only describe as confusion. Even the apex predator seemed baffled by this turn of events. Cadet Torres, said the human ambassador, a woman named Patricia Okonkwo, who always looked like she was one incident away from a stress-induced medical condition. Perhaps you should sit down now. But Ambassador, I am just trying to provide helpful context, Torres said, still standing. I mean, they are presenting this as their apex predator, but they have not given us any baseline comparison. What does it eat? What eats it? Does it have natural predators? These are important scientific questions. I had to admit, curse my professional integrity, she had a point. A small one. A very small one that was currently being drowned out by the diplomatic incident it was causing. Nothing eats the Creax, Vex9 said, his voice tight. It is the apex predator. That is the definition of apex predator. Right. But see, that is where this gets interesting, Torres continued, and I watched Ambassador Okonkwo age approximately 5 years in real time. On Earth, we have got lots of apex predators, and they are apex in their specific environments. Sharks in the ocean, tigers in the jungle, eagles in the sky. But humans? We are apex everywhere. We are apex in environments we were not even designed for. We went to the bottom of the ocean in a tin can just to see what was down there. We climbed the tallest mountains because they were tall. We went to space because it was there. Your point being, I found myself asking, despite my better judgment. Torres turned to me, her face lighting up with enthusiasm. My point is that being an apex predator on your home planet is like being the toughest kid in your school. It is impressive until you realize there are other schools. And some of those schools have kids who learn to fight bears for fun. Humans fight bears for fun? Asked Krell, his voice faint. Well, not anymore, Torres said. We made that illegal. Mostly. But we used to. We also used to fight lions in arenas, and bulls in rings, and each other in cages while people watched and ate snacks. Humans are weird about entertainment. The Galactic Council chamber was now filled with the sound of furious whispering in about 40 different languages. The translation matrix was working overtime, probably generating reports that would be studied for cycles to come. To Vex9 had pulled himself together somewhat, his scales settling into a deep purple that indicated bruised pride mixed with stubborn determination. The Creax has a bite force of 12,000 newtons. Its claws can slice through reinforced steel. It can run at speeds exceeding 80 kilometers per hour. It has never been defeated in combat. Never, Torres asked, her eyebrows rising. Not even by other Creax. Well, obviously other Creax can fight it. During mating season, territorial disputes. So it has been defeated, Torres said. By itself. That is like saying I am undefeated in combat, if we do not count all the times my brother punched me growing up. That is not the same thing. Kind of as though. Ambassador Okonkwo had her head in her hands now, mirroring my own position. We made eye contact across the chamber, two professionals watching their careers dissolve in real time, and I felt a moment of genuine connection with the human. Cadet Torres, Okonkwo said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had reached the absolute limit of their patience. What exactly are you trying to accomplish here? Torres blinked, as if suddenly realizing that she might have caused a problem. I am just saying that maybe we should have some standardized metrics for apex predator presentations. You know, to make them more meaningful. Like, apex predator relative to what? What is the context? Because if we are just going by scariest thing on your planet, I want to formally submit the goose for Earth's entry. The goose, Vex 9 repeated flatly. Canadian goose, specifically. They are demons in bird form. They have teeth on their tongues. On their tongues. They will chase you across a park for looking at them wrong. They have attacked military personnel. They hold grudges. If you want a real apex predator, forget about lions and tigers and bears. Give me a Canadian goose with a territorial dispute and a bad attitude. Several delegates were now openly laughing, though trying to hide it behind coughs and sudden interest in their data pads. The Creax, perhaps sensing that it had lost the room, laid down in its containment field and put its head on its paws. It looked depressed. I think, I said, standing up because someone had to salvage this situation and apparently I was the only one stupid enough to try. That what Cadet Torres is attempting to express, in her own unique way, is that the concept of apex predator is highly contextual and environment-specific. The Creax is undoubtedly an impressive specimen, and the Threxians should be proud of their world's evolutionary achievements. Thank you, Vex 9 said, some of the tension leaving his scales. However, I continued and watched the tension return. It might be beneficial for future presentations to include more comprehensive ecological data, prey populations, environmental challenges, evolutionary pressures, comparative analysis with similar species from other worlds. Torres pointed at me. Yes, that is what I was trying to say. You said it looked like your neighbor's dog, Krell whispered. A very impressive dog. Torres amended. Vex 9 stared at the human cadet for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Then back at Torres. You are telling me that on your world, you have multiple creatures more dangerous than the Creax. Oh yeah, Torres said. Tons. And that is not even counting humans themselves. Do you want to hear about what we can do with nothing but our endurance and a pointy stick? Because that story involves us hunting literally everything on our planet into submission over the course of about 50,000 years. The Creax whimpered. The atmosphere in the conference hall had shifted from diplomatic formality to something resembling a nature documentary discussion group, and I was not entirely sure how we had gotten here. Actually, that was a lie. I knew exactly how. The human cadet with the unfortunate talent for speaking her mind had somehow turned an apex predator showcase into an impromptu seminar on comparative xenobiology. 50,000 years, Vex 9 said slowly, as if testing the words. You hunted everything on your planet for 50,000 years. Give or take, Torres replied, now apparently fully committed to this conversation. We call it persistence hunting. See, humans are not fast. We are not strong. We do not have claws or fangs or venom or armor. What we have is the ability to just keep going. We can run for hours, days even. We would just follow prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, then walk up and poke it with a stick. Very anticlimactic, but extremely effective. That is horrifying, said a delegate from the Peluvian sector, a species that resembled oversized rabbits. Her ears were flat against her head in distress. It gets better, Torres said, which was absolutely not true. We also learned to throw things really accurately. Rocks, spears, whatever. And we learned to make traps. And use fire. And cooperating groups. Basically, we took every single advantage we could think of and combined them into this terrifying package of endurance, intelligence, and spite. Spite? I asked, against my better judgment. Oh yeah, humans are incredibly spiteful. We have climbed mountains that killed dozens of people just to prove we could. We have sailed across oceans in tiny boats because someone said it was impossible. We have gone to war over insults. We once had a war that started because someone threw a guy out of a window. Spite is a major motivating factor in human achievement. Ambassador Okonkwo had given up trying to control her cadet and was now just watching with the resignation of someone who had accepted their fate. The defenestration of Prague, she confirmed quietly. She is not making that up. Defenestration, Krell repeated. You have a word specifically for throwing people out of windows. We needed one, Torres said. It happened enough times to require terminology. The Creax had now rolled onto its back in the containment field, apparently having decided that if it could not be intimidating, it might as well be comfortable. I sympathized with the creature more than I wanted to admit that Vex 9's scales had settled into a sort of resigned gray. Very well. Let us say, hypothetically, that your species is more dangerous than the Creax. What exactly does that prove? Torres opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked genuinely thoughtful for the first time since this whole incident began. You know what? That is actually a really good question. I guess it does not prove anything. The Creax is still impressive. It is still the apex predator of your world. That matters. That is important. The ambassador's scales brightened slightly, shifting toward a more hopeful blue. But, Torres continued, and I watched the hope die in real time. Maybe the point is not about which apex predator is scariest. Maybe the point is what we do with that apex predator status. Because humans? We got to the top of the food chain, and then we looked around and said, okay, now what? And some of us decided to protect the things that used to hunt us. We have sanctuaries for tigers and sharks and bears. We have people who dedicate their entire lives to keeping apex predators alive, even though they are dangerous, even though they sometimes kill us, because we decided that biodiversity matters more than safety. The hall had gone quiet again, but this time it was a different kind of quiet, a thoughtful one. We also have people who fight to save mosquitoes, Torres added, which I personally think is taking conservation too far, but the point stands. Being apex does not mean dominating everything. It means having the power to choose. And humans choose weird things. We choose to go back to the moon even though we already went. We choose to save species that could eat us. We choose to reach out to the stars and meet other civilizations, even though that is terrifying and complicated and sometimes results in diplomatic incidents in conference halls. She looked directly at Vex 9. Your Creax is amazing. Seriously, I genuinely think it is cool. And I am sorry I laughed. I just got excited because it reminded me of home, and I miss my dog, and I have not seen anything familiar in 6 months. But the fact that you brought it here, that you want to share it with us, that is what really matters. Not how scary it is. Not whether it is scarier than a polar bear or a goose or whatever. The fact that you are proud of it and want us to understand your world better. Vex 9 stared at the human cadet for a long moment. His scales cycled through several colors before settling on a warm gold. Your dog, he said finally. The one this reminds you of. Is it truly not house-trained? Torres grinned. Steve's dog once ate an entire Thanksgiving turkey off the counter and then threw up in 7 different rooms. It is a menace, but Steve loves it anyway. That is kind of the point, right? We love things not because they are perfect, but because they are ours. That is surprisingly insightful. I found myself saying. I have my moments, Torres said, usually by accident. Ambassador Okonkwo stood up, smoothing her uniform. On behalf of the human delegation, I apologize for any offense caused by Cadet Torres' comments. However, I believe she has made some valid points about how we conduct these presentations. Perhaps the Council should consider establishing guidelines for comparative xenobiology showcases. Agreed, I said, standing as well. And perhaps we should also acknowledge that every species' apex predator is worthy of respect within its own context. The Creax is a remarkable creature, and we are honored that the Threxians chose to share it with us. Vex 9's scales had now fully shifted to gold, and he performed a gesture that I recognized as the Threxian equivalent of a bow. Thank you, lead xenobiologist. And Cadet Torres, despite your unusual approach, I believe I understand your perspective. Perhaps one day, you could tell me more about these geese you fear so greatly. They are not geese I fear, Torres said. They are geese everyone should fear. They know no mercy. As the session adjourned and delegates began filing out, I heard the Peluvian delegate whisper to her companion, I am never visiting Earth. Never. Persistence predators who throw things and hold grudges and have words for defenestration? Absolutely not. Krell leaned over to me. Do you think she was serious about the goose? I watched Torres talking animatedly with Vex 9, the Creax now sitting up in its containment field and watching them with what might have been curiosity. The human was gesturing wildly, probably describing some other terrifying Earth creature, and the Threxian ambassador was actually laughing. With humans, I said, I have learned never to assume anything is a joke. Somewhere on Earth, there is probably a goose that could kill us all, and it probably holds a grudge about something that happened 30 years ago. That is terrifying. Yes, I agreed, but also kind of impressive. Come on. We have about 40 incident reports to file, and I need something strong to drink. As we left the conference hall, I heard Torres say, So do you want to hear about hippos? Because hippos are statistically way more deadly than lions, and they look like floating potatoes, I walked faster. Some things, I decided, I did not need to know. So what did you think? Did this story surprise you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this sci-fi story, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing science fiction stories every week. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.